Hi, and welcome to our Friday video. We are talking about supply and demand curves, as we have been for a while, but we're going to be bringing in this concept of surplus. So I'm going to start the way we seemingly always do these days. Hopefully it's second nature by now. We have some axes with price and quantity on them. So let's talk about a market. Let's say we're talking about the market for dog food. I'm looking at my dog Teddy back behind me. There's people who are willing to buy dog food, and we've got a demand curve based on that, right? And so different people are willing to pay different amounts, and so we could think of the demand curve as almost sorting all these different people. And the people who are willing to pay a whole lot for dog food are over here, and the people who are potentially interested but they're not willing to pay much, they're over here. Now we've got suppliers in this market, the people who make and sell dog food, and at higher prices they're willing to sell more, so we draw our supply curve sloping up. So classic supply and demand. We know that there's an equilibrium, and so at this price the quantity demanded is equal to the quantity supplied, and we're selling dog food for $10 for a bag, whatever the price is. Now we mentioned the people way over here on the demand curve, they would be willing to pay a lot. If this is $10, they'd pay 20 bucks for that bag of dog food. They're out at home and their dog needs something to eat, right? Or their dog is super precious to them and they're willing to do just about anything for that dog, so they're willing to pay a lot for it. Now, the equilibrium price is $10. They would be willing to pay $20. They expect to get $20 worth of enjoyment out of having this food for their dog. So they're really a lot better off, right? They'd be willing to pay 20 bucks, but they only have to pay 10. So they get this benefit of being able to buy dog food for 10 bucks. Because they don't have to pay 20 bucks, they only have to pay 10. So that's a lot of, benefit that those people get. Now the people somewhere over here, they'd be willing to pay 15 bucks, they only have to pay 10. So they get $5 worth of extra happiness kind of by being able to buy this dog food. Now the people right over here by the equilibrium point on the demand curve, those are the people who are willing to pay about what it costs, about 10 bucks, maybe just a little bit more. So they don't get a lot of extra joy out of being able to buy this dog food. So if we take all the people, we end up factoring in this amount of benefit that they get from being able to buy dog food for 10 bucks when they would be willing to pay more for it. Or we can think of this very last person. They're willing to pay $10. They pay $10. They're actually kind of indifferent whether they buy it or not, right? If you think you're going to get $10 worth of value from this bag of dog food and it costs $10, that's one of those things where you may be standing at the store thinking about it for a little while because you're not sure. Like, yeah, I guess I'll get it. Or not. It doesn't really matter. So in all of our models, there's that marginal consumer who's just there. They're deciding to buy it or not. They're kind of indifferent. They don't really care. But of course, right next to them is someone who cares a little bit more, right? Values this product a little bit more. And so they don't get a lot of value from being able to buy it, but they get some. And again, as we go over, we get people who have more and more value. And so this whole area, what we're seeing underneath the demand curve, but above the equilibrium price, that's consumer surplus. I'm writing a CS there. Now, we can also think about the other side of this market. We've got all of these producers who are willing to make and sell dog food, And so the ones who are over here, they're willing to sell dog food at a pretty low price. They've probably got it in a warehouse already. They're ready to sell it. They got to get rid of it. They can't let it sit forever. It has expiration dates. So they'd be willing to sell it for $3 or $4, but they can sell it for 10 in equilibrium. So hey, they're pretty happy being able to sell this dog food for $10, right? They say, ah, great, it's off our hands now. Now, again, the same sort of thing. We can look at producers all along here until we get to a producer who's just about indifferent. They're, they're thinking I could make an extra bag of dog food and sell it for $10, or I could not. It really doesn't end up making a difference to me because it cost me about $10 to make it, and I can sell it for $10. So, yeah. So again, if we consider all the producers, all the suppliers who make up this curve, and we look at that area above the supply curve but below the equilibrium price, that gives us producer surplus. So we can actually see in our simple supply and demand chart where there are people getting benefits from being able to buy products and people getting benefits from being able to sell products. So this triangle here, together, we call that total surplus. And one thing economists think about, they think about how do we make that as big as possible? So, I mean, we want consumers to be well off. We also want producers to be well off. If we think about both of them put together, the total surplus people get from being able to buy and sell in the market, we want that surplus to be as big as possible. And if it's as big as possible, we call that efficient. So there's a lot of different concepts of efficiency within economics. Some of them get quite technical, but this concept of efficiency is that basically we can't make anyone better off without someone else taking a hit somewhere. So if we were to move somewhere on this chart, if we were to say dog food should be $11 and the price should be up here, I mean, we could see consumers are going to be worse off, right? If you take a sliver off of this consumer surplus, the consumer surplus area is going to be smaller. The producer surplus area is going to be bigger. It makes sense, right? It's intuitive. If prices go higher, that's bad for consumers. That's good for producers. So efficiency doesn't say no one could be made better off. Efficiency says no one can be made better off without someone else being made worse off in some way. And so making total surplus as big as possible is efficient because, as we'll see, there are some things that we can do that actually make it so that our total surplus area is smaller. That's making people worse off. And we can do better without hurting other people, actually. We can make everyone better off, at least potentially. So for now, think about making total surplus as big as possible. Why? Because we want consumers to do well and producers to do well. Yeah. In our next little video, we'll talk about what happens when we put in a price ceiling or a price floor and how that affects consumer surplus, producer surplus.